Well, there's been a lot of talk about innovation these days during the presidential campaign, and of course now with the stimulus package and everything. And I've written a lot about it on .earth, the innovation pipeline, I call it. So if you were in a position to lubricate the innovation pipeline, like to sort of make it work better,
right,
what would you do?
Well, so my position has been, and probably will remain, I suspect, for at least the near term, that there are several key bottlenecks in that innovation pipeline, and probably ones that don't get much attention. Primarily, they're the ones. There's an enormous amount of great research that is being done and has been done for 30 years now on energy and renewables. What's unfortunate is that very little of that has actually come out into practice. And I think that reflects one of the key bottlenecks that the university technology transfer process is sort of dangerously underdeveloped relative to the level of funding that universities receive. Primarily and particularly with Bayh-Dole.
So you're saying it's we're wasting that investment?
Yeah, in other words, we can pour more and more money into the front of that pipeline, but if the bottleneck still sits, we're not going to be able to push more water through, more funding, more ideas through. And that's, there's a focus on intellectual property and the notion that if university researchers publish and patent, then the rest of the pipeline will take care of the flow. And it turns out that, in fact, in almost every case, the university researchers and other very early people need to be involved in getting the ideas out of the laboratory and into the market. And without that early involvement and early effective involvement, the ideas languish. They sit on the shelf. And
so how do you kind of build that relationship or whatever?
So the critical piece to me is that to begin a new venture, to get a new venture moving out of the laboratory around science or technology, you need capital. And I think here is where the second problem comes in, is that capital is a much more nuanced resource than people tend to think. When you talk capital, people think money, financial capital, but there are actually four forms of capital. There's financial capital, there's physical capital, which would be equipment, land, lab space. There's intellectual capital, which is the know-how, and social capital, which is the know-who.
And I think you were telling me that that's the hardest one.
And the two that are really the hardest to get access to as a university researcher and to make use of are intellectual and social capital. University researchers have an abundance of intellectual capital around the technology, but almost no training or experience in how do you start a company, how do you build a team, and how do you develop the next stages of the technology to be commercially viable. And so the intellectual capital that's missing in a lot of the tech transfer process is that experience and know-how about building a team, about securing investment, about finding the right market and moving forward with a business. And the social capital that comes with it would be understanding how to build that team and who's available, who are the right people, where are the investors and how do you get to know them, how do you meet the right customers.
So can you just have cocktail parties and have the scientists and engineers meet with, I don't know, CEOs?
You haven't been to enough cocktail parties with scientists and engineers.
No, that wouldn't do it.
They don't mingle well. Or I suppose they do mingle well, but they mingle with the social networks that do them well.
Yeah.
And I think, we all do. We're all very good at spending time with those people in our current communities. Yeah. And one of the things that federal research spend has created in the university system is a very nicely closed community that brings scientists together. They review each other's work, they review each other's grant proposals, and so there's no real need for them to build networks that extend beyond that community.